What's up? I'm Johnny, and this is another Logic tutorial. Today I thought I'd go into how I like to get things going as fast as possible in terms of a mix and having plenty of buses for um, tweaking and all the fun things that happen later on once I track guitars and bass and everything else that might go into a song. So first I'm going to make a blank session and walk you through all the bussing, and then I'll go into kind of my favorite plugins that's made things just super fast to get a really good drum tone. So I'm going to make a software instrument and I'm going to load Contact 6 with multi-output 16x stereo as the instrument source. I'm going to drag and drop Modern and Massive. I'm just going to close that. I'm going to give it an icon, a name, and then we're going to add the rest of our tracks down here on this little plus until it won't let you make any more. I'm going to highlight everything because I forgot to before I started and change their colors. I'm going to go with blue this time. And then I'm going to rename these tracks. Go ahead and type that in really quickly. And I've made a couple extras, so I'm just going to press the minus button to delete those last two. Then we're going to get our buses set up. Before we even go into the environment and make the drummer, let's go ahead and find our like instruments. So the two kicks, I'm going to make +1. The two snares, I'll make +2. 3 toms are going to be on +3. Overhead ride and hats are all going to be a cymbal bus for +4, and then we're going to do a room bus on +5. We're not even done yet because now I want to take the kick, snare, and tom's bus and bus that to a shells bus. And then these other two are cymbals, and our room will be we'll call that one shine. So this will be the shells, the room. I'm going in reverse order. Okay. And there's one last thing we're going to do with these specific 5 buses 6 and 7. We're going to make a send on bus 8. And we'll make them pre-fader. And I'm turning them up, I don't know, -11 dB to start with. We'll dial that in kind of better, but basically this is going to be our compression. And I'm just going to load in a stock Logic compressor. It'll be the Studio FET, of course. It's my favorite sounding one. And now we're going to make tracks for everything. So we're going to select all the way from, we already have a track for kick sum, so we're going to go from kick sub all the way to our comp and right click and create tracks for them. So now hit X again and we go back to just our regular window. We have tracks for everything. So I'll go ahead and change all the icons really quickly. And I'm going to change the colors of our main buses just to be slightly unique. But last bus, we're going to highlight every track that we made and Command-Shift-D or create track stack from track menu. And we're going to make it a summing stack. And we're going to call it drums so that everything looks organized. There's one last thing. You might want to change these to stereo pan balance. So it's actually taking away part of your signal if you're panning without it in stereo pan mode. Okay, so now we're going to remember how to create our drummer track. So we're going to press Command 0 to get to our environment. And right here where we have kick sub, we're going to want a new mapped instrument. So we have our drummer track, and we're going to take this little arrow, which becomes a cable, and plug it in to our kick sub. Don't remove. Drag and drop the drummer to the track area and create. Now we can close this, and we have our drummer. And I'm going to make him a dark blue. Our drummer track, I'm going to right click and create a MIDI region and make it as long as the song. Double click, and we can start programming our beat. So now I'm going to pull a different session out of the oven. I've already programmed a beat for us, and we have the mapped note names. And if you don't know how to do that, I'm going to refer you to my first video. There'll be a link in the description. And this part really is the time-consuming part. But once you have a template, then you can just make that template your go-to. So let's go ahead and just turn everything off. Plugins off. Let's hear the raw drums. All right, so let's start to dive in a little bit. Let's start with the kick. So obviously we have 2 kick channels. I'm just letting those go straight into the bus with nothing on it. I do a little bit of EQ. This really awesome plugin, every single bus gets one, or instrument. Or as you can see, I have instances for each tom individually, but not on the tom track or tom bus. Without it, with it. Talk about what I'm doing here. There is a low frequency enhancer. I've got the drive cranked. It's just it makes it sound cool. Makes it sound really awesome. All the amount of the high frequency enhancer. Let's go take a look at, without the transient shaper, what are these low and high frequency enhancers doing? So just everything you would want to get out of your kick, this plugin is it just does it. And then of course our transient shaper, let's hear the without that and with it. So just adding a little bit. And then I have an instance of Pro Q. Just a little bit of downward compression and notching out a little mud. Really subtle in the mix. It makes a pretty big difference. And then let's take a look at the snare. First, I'm doing a little bit of boost in the resonance area. And I'm just doing that using the high pass. Yeah, like the resonance Q on the high pass. So it just gives it that extra resonance boost right where I need it and cuts out what I don't want. And I'm adding a little bit of that 5K snare crack, or I guess 44. And let's dive into the SSL. So same 3 parts of it. I'm just using the low, high, and transient parts of it. And this transient shaper just helps kind of, I don't know, drive it. And I can tell it's going into the red a little bit on the output, but I just like the way it sounds, I guess, that we're like that. It's giving it like some harmonics or something because of the clipping, and it just sounds really awesome. So once we get into the actual mix plugins on the drum bus, that's when you kind of really see where this magic comes into play. But let's take a look at the toms first. So I'm just using high passes strategically at the resonance frequency of each of the tom hits. A little bit more leeway on that low tom because I kind of want that boomy. And then the SSL. And we're gonna push the ratio a little bit, maybe 5, 6. 6-1 is probably good for this sound I'm looking for. And now we have a ton of extra gain. That you see that was like plus 10 dB. So what I'm doing here on the drum bus is this crazy EQ, and I know it looks scary, but this is really kind of maximizing the sound of the kit in terms of the snare and the kick without taking too much of the mud with it, because I want to fill this area with guitars, and I really just want that snare crack to be the most present thing. And everything else, as you can see, I've got a negative 6 dB on the output of this. This next plugin is just a little bit of bus compression from Joey Sturgis, taming some of the peaks. Then I have Saturn, and I have 4 bands, some major saturation in the high end, and then a lot less as we kind of go down into the actual range where the drums are. Just kind of helps give it even more of that kind of a tape familiarity that we're all kind of used to hearing from our favorite albums over the years. An instance of compression. Last, I have just this limiter on it. This one right here is just to tame any frequencies that might get doubled up in the drums that we don't want passing 0. So right here is just 0 dB gain. And that's it. That's how I get my drums. Like, if you like the sounds you're hearing, leave a comment. If you don't, also leave a comment. I want to know why maybe it sounds bad to you. But for now, let's just hear the beat. Let's hear what we have. So that'll probably do it for this video. Maybe in the future I'll make another one using just the stock Logic plugins, but it's not going to sound like that. Until then, we'll see you in the comments.